It is 12:30. I am going to call the August 19th Regional Board meeting to order. I do have confirmation of quorum. Can I get somebody to please?
Move adoption.
Second.
Thank you, Director Lee. Thank you, Director Cornfield. Is there any additions? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the public agenda. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. I have no petitions and delegations today. Can I get somebody to move the minutes from July 22nd, please? And please remember to use the chat. Moved by Director Unger, seconded by Director Colburn. Thank you very much. Is there any errors or omissions in those minutes? Seeing none, I will call the question. Is there anyone in opposition? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. Is there any business arising from those minutes?
I have one thing.
Okay, Director Lee.
Director Lee. My question is, will the next board meeting on September 16th be open to physical attendance by all directors and the public? Will we be attending in person, or is that to be determined?
At this point, that will be at the pleasure of each director. It will be open to the public. I was going to mention in my chair's report, we do have one person that has responded that wishes to be in the gallery. If directors wish to be in the gallery, then they can be, or they can participate online depending on their own comfortability.
So will you be chairing from the boardroom on that meeting? And chair?
At this point, depending on where my infrastructure is, I'm chairing from my office in the SRD building. So I will determine that when we know what kind of infrastructure we have within the board at that time.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Just a follow-up on that, if I can, Madam Chair. Really, until further notice, and that kind of means a vaccine, directors are going to be able to participate virtually for months and months and months. So even though we'll be open, and if directors want to participate in person, they'll have to let us know so we can make accommodations, but there's no requirement. You can continually virtually participating, and we open it up for a number of members of the public to come by invite, so we can make sure there's physical distancing in the boardroom.
Okay,
thanks.
Thank
you. Director Davis, you have a question? Is this
thanks, Madam Chair. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yep.
Yeah, my question is, what are the protocols going to be around physical attendance?
Well, if I may, Madam Chair, we have a safety plan. We can forward that to you, but it's the obvious. It's a physical distancing, washing hands, limited contact, so on.
masks.
Masks, yeah. So we have a safety plan for coming into the building that we provide to the board, but we can bring that to your attention if you want.
Okay.
Sure, if you could email that out to us, I'd really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. I have no more requests for business arising from minutes. We have no public considerations today, no notices of motion. My chair's report, as you all notice, this agenda is a little bit large today, and I was hoping to get as much business completed as we possibly can, because the next meeting we will be focusing on Connected Coast, because we have made some really, really great strides in there, and it needs to come back to the board. Also the grant and aid policy and any emergent issues, but we will be having no delegations at that meeting, just so that staff have the ability to deal with the Connected Coast issue as much as they need to be. And there will be a presentation from staff on that could be 20 minutes to half an hour. But it's a great leap forward, and I look forward to all of the directors knowing that. We do have our first reply to be present in the gallery at the September meeting, which I've already talked about, which is absolutely great. And I just want to thank staff for working on that model and getting us up and open and transparent with what looks like is going to become our new normal. I will be attending a conference call tomorrow at 11:30 with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding the updates from the province on the COVID-19 reopening plans. So I will be reporting out on that as well. And I just want to notice that Mr. Jules, Director Jules is with us again today. And we are happy that our partners with the Cayuga-Chequasit, who are currently non-voting participants, are interested in completing the process to become full voting members before their deadline in April of next year. We welcome that and thank them very much for going through that process. So going forward into September and October, the expectation will be that the leadership of the regional district, myself, Director Unger, Director Abram, will be in a meeting with the province and leadership of the Cayuga-Chequasit to start that process off. Anybody else that wishes to participate in that certainly can via electronic meeting if you wish, and we will be letting you know what the dates look like for that as we move forward. That is my chair's report for today. If I can just get somebody to move that.
Receipt.
Thank you,
Brenda.
And second in chat, if somebody could do that. Second by Director Colburn. Thank you very much. Is there any questions regarding my report?
Madam Chair, just
yes.
before we move on, it's Director Anderson. I'm just wanting to make sure that people can hear me on the phone and acknowledge that I'm here.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Director Anderson. We can.
So I'm *6, I believe, mutes and unmutes. I will do that as I can. I just don't have, actually I do have access to the chat somehow, but not the online meeting. So I'm present. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us know you're here. That's wonderful. Okay, with no other comments, I'll call the question on my report. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no one, I will call that carried. Nothing on the consent calendar. Committee chairs reports. Director Abram.
So sorry, I just lost my agenda just like seconds ago.
Okay.
This was the Electoral Services Committee. Yes, I'd move receipt of the minutes.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Wally. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on receipt. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. On to number 2, the Strathcona Gardens Commission, Director Adams. Nope, moved by Director Adams, seconded by Director Colburn. Is there any discussion?
If I can, I just want to share with the board that press release will be going out immediately after the board meeting regarding the federal infrastructure grant application for Recreate, and want to send particular thanks to Corinne and Wolfgang at Strathcona Gardens, but also Elaine Popoff for the work that she's doing in communications and preparing the press releases and notifications. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed to receipt? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. We have no extraterritorial report. On to staff reports. Number 1, the Environmental Sensitivity Area Development Permit DB2D20 Hagel. Director Lee, please.
So move receipt from Mary D.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Colburn. Thank you very much. And discussion to staff.
Nothing to add from staff, Madam Chair.
Director Lee, is there anything you would like to add?
Well, I was willing to move the motion, but I wanted a slight amendment possibly. I just have to ask about it though before I move it. Through the chair to our planning staff, there is a significant eagle's nest right alongside Stonefly Creek and adjacent to these properties just above it. And Area D's bylaw calls for a 600-foot setback from eagles and other endangered birds. So this report that was attached to this proposal for a DP only addresses riparian setbacks for the fish, doesn't recognize the eagle's nest. So is that something that they would have to apply for separately under a different DP, or could it be included in this DP? Through the chair to our planning manager.
Okay, I believe that's to John. John, would you like to answer that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just checking to see whether that tree is still active.
Yes,
I do have
is.
some records here.
Well, I walked by Hagel, up to Hagel, and there's eagles.
Okay, well, if there is an active tree, then the the terms of the official community plan would have to be followed in respect to the nesting season. So
yes.
Construction could occur between the months of September and the end of December. Otherwise, a report from a biologist with respect to the eagle tree would have to be submitted, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Another DP. So this DP wouldn't be affected by the eagle's nest DP. It would be a separate DP.
That's correct. It would have to be a separate DP if the eagles are going to be affected by any development. Yes.
Okay. So could you make a note of that for the future when that land next to that eagle's nest starts to be developed, and so that they have to apply for the DP, and then I'll move the once this is received, after it's received, I'll move the motion as proposed, the action.
Okay, is there any other discussion on receipt? Seeing none, I'll call the question on receipt. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing nobody opposed, that's carried. Director Lee, on to part B.
Move B regarding the riparian area DP.
Okay, and a second. Second, Director Abram, thank you very much. And is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no one opposed, I'll call that carried. On to number 2, the Cortes Island Hall funding agreements. Director Anderson.
Move receipt.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Wally. Through to staff, please.
Nothing to add, Madam Chair.
Okay, Director Anderson, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Not other than this went through committee and staff totally support it. Just getting the final agreements in place to make these services work.
Wonderful. Okay, so on receipt, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. To part B, Director Anderson.
I would move B, that the agreements with the Whaletown Community Club and the Southern Cortes Community Hall be approved, and that the chair and corporate officer be authorized to execute the contracts.
Thank you. That is seconded by Director Unger. Director Adams, you had a comment on 2B?
Yes, thank you. Just through to the corporate officer, just to confirm that all costs associated with administration, operating, and maintenance of these facilities are borne from the electoral area B.
Okay, through to staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the extent that the bylaw permits the regional district to subsidize those activities, yes, only electoral area B is paying for those costs.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I will call that carried. Thank you. On to number 3, the Strathcona Gardens Recreate Project Design and Procurement. Director Adams. Move receipt. Thank you. Seconded by Director Colburn. That is wonderful. Is there any discussion on receipt?
Nothing from staff, Madam Chair.
Nothing from staff. Question from Director Cornfield.
Surprise, surprise. Just could we be provided a copy of what option 1 is? At some future, between now and the next meeting?
Yeah,
Just so that I've got some information that I'm able to answer any questions that come up.
If I could chime in, Director Cornfield, right off the top, I mentioned that a press release would be going out after today's meeting. That was subsequent to receipt of item 3, and that will identify specifically what areas of Strathcona Gardens are being submitted for the grant application.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't believe you were on at the time, Director Adams, but I'd asked for staff, because there was no specifics about what option 1 was in the report. Just like to have it so that it's got a copy.
Okay, thank you very much. That has been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, we're really excited to get this in. Really happy to get the press release out and looking forward to this coming to our community really soon. Okay, so that is on receipt. I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing nobody, that is carried. Part B, which is that the grant application for Recreate Project Concept 1 excluding ice services be submitted to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, and that an RFP process be initiated to select a prime consultant and sub-consultants to complete the design and procurement of the Recreate project. That is moved by Director Adams, seconded by Director Colburn. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, this is Campbell River and Electoral Area D only. I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I will call that carried. On to number 4, which is the Emergency Response Program, SRD delivers. If I can get somebody to move receipt, please. Moved by Director Unger, seconded by Director Colburn. Thank you very much. I will go to staff and to Mr. Koopman, please.
Through the chair to the board, the report in front of you outlines the emergency funding that was handed out to different organizations to assist vulnerable populations with receiving delivery of groceries and their basic essentials. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. I have a question from Director Colburn.
I am just curious how, if this would be continuing or if this would be reinstated in the fall. Do you have any information about that, Mr. Koopman?
To Director Colburn through the chair, great question. The province has said that this could become an eligible expense item again should our COVID situation worsen. However, the province has not defined or given a trigger point to what they consider worsen to be.
Okay, thank you. Director Davis.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the SRD and our staff for implementing this program, and we certainly availed of it quite a bit in the village of Tassus, as well as other programs. Currently, our senior society is supplying food to 70 households in town using this and other programs. So anyway, I'd just like to give thanks on that.
Thank you. I think it's been a wonderful success as well. Follow-up, Director Colburn.
Just curiosity about how the funding would be received were it not for a society, say a nonprofit. Mr. Koopman and I have talked about this before, the capacity issues that maybe some of the smaller communities have. And so how we could hopefully work with the province to enable another body to administer some of this would be really helpful if this is going to continue, if the situation worsens and it comes into play again. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Mr. Koopman, do you have any response to that?
To the chair, to Director Colburn, sorry, that was pretty broken up on my end, but the question was around the flexibility of applicants for this program. The province did, so in the report, it states that the Sayward Community Futures Society, their application was not eligible for funding because that society proposed hiring a staff member specifically for the coordination of this program. And the feedback from the province was that the situation of COVID was not bad enough on Vancouver Island or in Sayward to warrant or justify paying someone to coordinate the program, but that type of paid coordination position could be eligible if the situation worsened.
Okay, does that answer your question, Director Colburn?
It does, kind of, and so I've just put a little something in the chat and I can discuss with him later so that I don't hold up the meeting. Thanks so much.
Wonderful, thank you very much. So we have receipt of this report on the floor.
Madam Chair, did you miss me in the chat room?
I'm sorry, I do not have anything in the chat room from you, Director Cornfield, but go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I guess I forgot to press the little button. My question is through to Mr. Koopman, and I think that this is a great program. Congratulations and well done. I think it's served a really useful purpose. Depending on what happens in the next wave and depending on what happens with emergency services and fund it, I think it's important that we report back on the use of the grant. So my question is, I noticed that the number of households served is shown in all but the Cortez. And is there a reason why it wasn't determined, or did they do something that was different? And I think it's important to report back to the funder on the success of the program.
Okay, Mr. Koopman?
Through the chair to Director Cornfield, that is a great question, and the answer is because the Cortez Island Economic Society did propose a different alternative. They did not offer the grocery service directly. They applied for funding, and I believe they received funding from other organizations on Cortez and hired a staff person to research what it would take to put together a proposal for Cortez Island should the COVID situation worsen in the area for the fall. So because there was no actual grocery delivery, nobody actually received the service directly, but the Cortez funding was handed out to help them deliver a plan and put together a plan.
Okay,
but I thought they were, like Sayward was deemed to be ineligible because they wanted to hire a person to oversee it. How is this part different in Cortez versus Sayward?
To Director Cornfield from the chair, that's a great question that I asked of the province as well that I did not get a straightforward answer on. The essential answer came that Cortez was researching how to deliver the service, but not actually delivering the service. Sayward was going to pay somebody to administer the service. So my understanding, if Cortez then applied for somebody from the Cortez Island Economic Society or another organization to be paid to facilitate the service on behalf of Cortez, that would be ineligible unless the Cortez COVID situation drastically worsened.
So the number of households served was actually 0.
Correct.
That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion on receipt? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, that will be called carried. On to number 5, which is the Quathayaski Cove Sewer Extension Parcel Tax. Director Abram.
Yeah, move receipt.
Seconded by Director Kerr. Thank you very much. Through to staff, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Mike will speak to this.
Okay,
Heather. Yes, this is the or to get the parcel tax in to pay off for the sewer loan.
okay. Thank you, Director Abram.
Yeah, just after receipt, I'd be moving the motion with, I believe you have an amendment there, that Edie has an amendment to put up.
Okay, thank you. So I will call the question on receipt, seeing I have no other speakers. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. Is it a amendment or is it a subsequent, Director Abram?
I think it's a subsequent.
It's a subsequent, okay. So if I can get somebody to move Part B. Moved by Director Unger, seconded by Director Colburn. Director Abram, are you there? Director Abram?
I think Edith has a motion.
The motion is on the floor that a bylaw be prepared for the board's consideration that would impose a parcel tax on those properties within Kwathiaski Cove Sewer System Extension area that have declined to prepay their share of project costs. And that's my understanding that there's a subsequent that comes after that as well. So this is the motion that is on the floor. Director Abram, can you hear us? Do you need to speak to this?
Through the chair, I don't have a subsequent for this item. I have one for a different item, but not for this one.
Okay. We seem to have lost Director Abram, but this is on the floor at this time. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this motion?
Brenda Lee, I think we should table this momentarily until we can get Director Abram back on the line. And
Okay,
move on to the next thing and come back when he can connect with us.
Yeah, well, my concern is that the next items are all Director Abram, so.
Sounds like he's trying to get through.
So. Okay, Mr. Schuland?
Madam Chair, if I could speak to this?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So what the board is dealing with this resolution is really fairly straightforward. In any type of situation, there is a need to recover funding through a parcel tax, which is what is specified in the service bylaw that was passed at referendum. And it's quite a normal process. It will take a while to build this bylaw. It has to go through the local court of revision, et cetera, early in the new year. And I think really this is just getting ahead of the curve, if you will, and having this all prepared in time for the board to have thorough discussion on the details of it before we get into the time crunch early in 2021.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes.
So there's 43 properties that are involved.
Yes.
And each property that chose to prepay, we're paying $4,447. Is that right? And then the rest of them are going to pay that much plus interest for how many years? Like 20-year term?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so how much, through the chair to our finance manager, how much will those people be paying? Like the prepaid ones are paying $4,447. The others will pay probably double that, with interest over 20 years.
If I may, Madam Chair, the people that prepaid the 4,000 are not included in the parcel tax bylaw. It's the people who didn't pay. So
who didn't pay.
Yeah, so that $4,000 and change will be paid throughout a 20-year term.
I believe the annual amount's about $348.
Okay, that's a good information. $348 per year.
Okay.
Excuse me, it's Jim Abram. I'm
You're
now
back?
calling in by phone. Do you have me?
Yep, I do.
Okay, so are we still talking about Q Cove sewer extension?
Yeah, we're just on part B, and then we'll go to your subsequent after. Yeah,
Okay, the number that was just tossed out, could I ask a question, please?
certainly.
Okay, so Mike, that was you, I assume?
Yes.
348 something?
Yeah, we have to wait till we actually ink the loan, and then we'll get the applicable amounts.
Okay, but that amount will be on top of the annual operating fee, is that correct?
You talking the payment for the debt, or yeah, that would be in addition to whatever they pay annually for the operating fee. Yes.
Okay, and that's only the people that did not prepay.
That's correct.
Okay, I think I've got it.
Okay.
Yep, now we can move on. I'm sorry, the power went out, internet went out, so now I'm just trying to reconnect. So I'm having to do sort of a hybrid computer phone board meeting.
Okay. We'll try our best to keep you in the loop here. So we are on part B. I have no other questions, so I'm gonna call the question.
Okay, has it been
part
moved?
B. That's already
Okay,
been
on
moved
part,
and seconded.
can I move part B with an amendment that Edie has?
We'll do the next part as a subsequent, Director Abram. So right
Thank
now,
you.
part B is on the floor. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, that is carried. On to your subsequent, Director Abram.
Okay, the subsequent would be, and further that, the property owners will be sent a letter from the SRD fully explaining this process.
Okay, can I get a seconder, please? Seconded by?
Second,
Okay.
Lee.
Director Lee, thank you. Is
Yep.
there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. Thank you very much. On to number 6, permissive tax exemption 2021 Royal Canadian Legion Branch 154. Director Abram.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to move that.
Okay, seconded by Director Wally. Thank you very much. And is there any discussion, Director Abram?
No, I'm just very pleased to be able to do this each year for the Legion because they provide one heck of a service for Quadra Island and the outer islands even. And the amount is not a lot, but it's for a small organization, it helps. I think it's about $818 is what I figured out. So, you know, it's a help. They appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. I have Director Adams and then Director Cornfield. Director Adams, please. And can I just remind people to please put themselves on mute if they are not speaking so we reduce the background noise. Director Adams, please.
Thank you, Chair, and this is through to Director Abrams and to our CAO. I'm certainly appreciating the comments of Director Abrams and this permissive tax exemption. Are we able to do this in perpetuity rather than having to redo it annually every year?
Through to staff, please.
Madam Chair, I can speak to that if you wish.
Yep.
So the legislation does provide that we can extend it beyond 1 year, but in order to do that, up to 10 years, I should say. But in order to do that, we would have to take this to a vote throughout the entire region. So it'd be a fairly expensive proposition to do that, but it can be done.
Okay, thank you. And Director Cornfield, please.
No, I'll skip it. Thanks,
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you. Director Abram, did you have anything else to add on receipt? I hope we haven't lost him again. Anyway, on receipt, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed?
I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay,
All right.
sorry to hold you up, but
Nope.
in response to Director Adams, can you hear me?
Yeah, quickly.
Okay, just I've asked before, same answer, and the cost of doing it far outweighed the benefit. So we just said, let's just continue doing it annually.
Okay, thank you. So I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed to receipt? Seeing no opposition, I will call that carried. On to part B. I've got Director Adams has moved part B, seconded by Director Colburn. Thank you very much. And that is that a bylaw be prepared for the board's consideration, which would allow a permissive tax exemption for 2020 for all land and improvements in property class 08 for the Royal Canadian Legion. Do I have any discussion?
Madam Chair, if I could interrupt just briefly, there is an error in the staff recommendation. It should read for 2021.
Okay, thank you very much. And that will be corrected through staff.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So for the board's knowledge, it should read 2021 and staff will be correcting that. So we are voting for a tax exemption for 2021. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone in opposition? Seeing none, I will call that carried. On to number 7, the permissive tax exemption 2021 for Surge Narrows Community Association. Director Abram.
Yes, I'd move the staff report.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Wally. Thank you very much. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on receipt. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing nobody opposed, I'll call that carried. On to part 2, that the bylaw be prepared for the board's consideration.
I'd like to move that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director Abrams, seconded by Director Wally. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I'd just like to say that this piece of land was, it's sort of a block in a succession of blocks that have been purchased over the years or owned by the community, and it creates quite a corridor of protected lands and parkland and, you know, trails, et cetera, et cetera. And that this was done completely by the community by donation, and it was not cheap. So it's really something to be proud of, and they are extremely proud of it. And they're still collecting money on it, which they're putting into the actual improvements. So this is going to be a nice addition to our Area C.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no one in opposition, I'll call that carried. On to number 8, floodplain relaxation covenant, Salmon Point Resort. Director Lee, please.
Move receipt.
Thank you, and seconded by Director Kerr. Thank you very much. To staff, please.
Nothing to add from staff, Madam Chair.
Okay, Director Lee, is there anything to add?
Yes, well, the plans went to my advisory commission in March before COVID hit, and everyone is really excited about the new Salmon Point Pub Restaurant being constructed. I understand they're already under construction, but they're asking to, and they were building on the original foundation, but now they need to get floodplain relief. They have a large breakwater all, you know, in front of the resort there that's quite high up. So I think they are protected from the ocean, and the engineer's report confirms that. So I'm really happy to see Area D moving ahead on a couple of developments here at this board that are pretty big and pretty exciting.
Wonderful, thank you. Director Cornfield, please.
Just unmuting.
Yep.
My normally with floodplain has to do with rivers and overflowing banks and erosion and whatnot. Does this covenant protect us and provide against our liability or protection against liability for sea level rise?
Okay, through to staff, I'm being told this will go to John.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yes, the covenant will protect the SRD against any liability, Madam Chair.
Okay. Including sea level rise.
Through the chair, I would believe so. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe we can confirm that at some point in the future.
Okay. Thank you, Director Cornfield. Is there any other discussion on receipt? Seeing nothing, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. On to part B, Director Lee.
Move B.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Wally. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I'll call the questions. This is all electoral areas. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, we'll call that carried. On to N, bylaws. Bylaw number 352, Quadroponics Cannabis Inc. RZ8C19, Hedifine. Director Abrams, please.
I'd like to move receipt of each administrative officer's report or comment.
Second.
Thank you. And seconded by Director Lee. And discussion through to staff.
Nothing to add, Madam Chair.
Okay. Director Abram, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, you all have known that I've been very opposed to holding a public hearings virtually, as I do not feel it is a true democratic process open. But these bylaws, including the future ones that we're going to be looking at, they've been waiting a very long time, assuming that we would be able to wait until the COVID-19 crisis was over. Well, the pandemic is still here and it's ramping up again at 85 today. I feel that we can put off these hearings any longer, and I'm willing to agree to a hybrid virtual in-person model at this time due to the circumstances. And then later I will have a motion to put forward with some provisions.
Okay, thank you very much. And you have sent in that subsequent, and Edith has it, so thank you very much for being proactive, Director Abrams. Is there any other discussion on receipt? Seeing none, I'll call the question. This is all directors. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition.
You said that was all.
Okay, on to part B, Director Abrams.
Okay, yes, thank you. I would like to move part B.
Okay, which is introducing it for the first time, and that is seconded by Director Anderson. Thank you very much. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, seeing none, that is carried. On to part C, Director Abram.
Yes, I'd like to move second reading as part C.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Wally. Is there any discussion? Reminder that this is all electoral areas only. I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, that's carried. And on to part D, please, Director Abram.
Yes, I would like to move part D, that further report regarding a public hearing for bylaw number 352 be prepared for the board's consideration.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Wally. Thank you very much. And is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? This is all electoral areas only. Seeing no one in opposition, that is carried. On to number 2, bylaw 386, rezoning proposal RZ2C20 South Quadra Fire Protection. Director Abram.
I would like to move the report from the CAO.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Director Wally. Through to the CAO. Is there any discussion?
Nothing to add, Madam Chair?
Okay, Director Abram.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that these folks have waited a long time also, and this is for Fire Hall number 2, which has basically been condemned in Harriet Day. It's a block building, and they have managed to secure a piece of property almost right across the street from it at a very reasonable price from a very generous landowner. And they are now going to have to go to a AAP to borrow the money to pay back their reserve fund for the amount to build the building. But first they need to have the rezoning in order to proceed with the bylaw to borrow the money. So this is step 1. The other is being advertised at this very moment, and it will be out there for the next few weeks. But right now we're just doing the rezoning, and I'm all in favor of it.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on receipt? Seeing none, this is for all directors. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. On to Part B, Director Abrams.
Yeah, I'd like to move the bylaw 386, being a bylaw to amend zoning regulations applicable to Quadra Island, be now introduced and read a first time.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Director Lee. Thank you very much for using your chat function. Is there any discussion? This is all electoral areas only. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. On to Part C, Director Abram.
Yeah, the bylaw number 386 be given second reading.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Anderson. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, is there anyone opposed? I'll call C carried. On to Part D, Director Abram.
That a further report regarding the scheduling of a public hearing for bylaw number 386 be prepared for the board's consideration.
Seconded by Director Kerr. Thank you very much. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? No opposition. We'll call that carried. On to number 3, which is bylaw number 379 and 380 OCP and rezoning CB 1B19/RZ1B19 Cortez Island Senior Society. Director Anderson.
I'd like to remove the report from the Chief Administrative Officer be received.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Wally. And through to staff, is there any comments?
Nothing from staff, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Director Anderson, do you have any comments?
Not particularly. This has been before the board before. This is simply a portion of the 50 acres of land that the community fundraised and purchased for community housing that they're wanting to rezone to allow for application to be made to BC Housing for 20 some units of multi-age and senior family housing. We were scheduled to go to public hearing back in the spring. That got tabled. And just preemptively of B, it has come to my attention that the public hearing date proposed for the September 10th is a date that we are in solid waste. And so staff have suggested 4 alternate dates that would work, but I've not heard back from my rural colleagues which of those 4 would be ideal. So, Madam Chair, if you would be willing after the receipt of just to allow a moment of checking in with my 3 rural colleagues to see which of those 4 dates would work, and then I'd put forward a slightly amended B. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much. I'll call receipt on A then so that we can move forward with that discussion. Is there anyone in opposition? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. Let's just quickly, before we put the motion on the floor, have a discussion regarding B. And I have a note from Director Adams that he would like to have a comment on 3B.
Thank you. I think it's really important that we have these public hearings reconvene, but for members of the public that are immune compromised or maybe out of town or away, and in light of Dr. Bonnie Henry and Dr. Tam's reports in the last couple of days that we're now at record levels for British Columbia of COVID, I would really like to see these meetings, if they are being held in person, to also have the option of people joining virtually.
So I'm just going to go to staff because I believe that that is already the case. So to our CAO, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So with all these public hearings coming up, there will be a combination of availability for in-person social distancing, following safety protocols, as well as virtual attendance. So every base will be covered in these. So, but there has to be an opportunity to have them physically available to attend the meeting as well and adhere to the social distancing guidelines, which we will. So that's why we have to put a location up there, but absolutely we will have the ability for all virtual participation by members of the public and the directors.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Adams. Back to Director Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to my three rural colleagues, if there's anyone that can mute that isn't,
yeah,
that'd be great.
There we go.
The 4 dates that work for the applicant and staff and the hall are in the afternoons of Monday, September 28th, Tuesday, September 29th, Thursday, October 1st, and Thursday, October 15th. If any of those dates do not work for some of my 3 rural colleagues, I'd love to know that now.
Okay. So anybody from the electoral areas, if you have anything to chime in, other than that, I'm going to, if there is no comments, I'm going to ask Director Anderson to please insert a date so that we can move forward.
I would like to comment. I have, it's Director Lee.
Okay.
I prefer the October 15th date because I have library board business at the beginning of the, pardon me, at the end of September.
Okay.
Chairs reviews on agendas and actual meetings. So I'd rather have October 15th, I believe.
Okay.
Does that work, Gerald and Jim, for you? Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Jim.
Yeah.
Okay, for a minute, I don't know why, but I wasn't on. Okay, so you said September 10th we have something? We have solid waste?
Correct.
Okay, I don't have that in my book, sorry. Okay, so I like the October 15th date that Brenda mentioned.
Okay, thank you. Director Wally?
Gerald, does that work for you, Mr. Wally?
October would be fine for me.
Great. Okay, so I would then move that a public hearing on bylaw number 379 and 380, being Cortes Island Senior Society, be authorized to be held starting at 3 p.m. on Thursday, October 15th, 2020, in accordance with the requirements of Ministerial Order M192, and that the Manson's Community Hall, located at 983 Beasley Road, Cortes Island, be designated as the physical location for the public hearing for those individuals wishing to attend the the hearing in person, and that the holding of the public hearing be delegated to the electoral area directors, with the directors for Area B and the electoral area A designated as chair and vice chair respectively for the public hearing.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. I just have a question through to staff. Seeing that this is going to be held over on Cortes and it's now into mid-October, knowing that water taxis don't go after dark, is 3 o'clock problematic?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The preference would be to hold the public hearing a little bit earlier, just to ensure that there would be sufficient amount of time to return on the water taxi prior to dark.
Okay. So through to Director Anderson.
I'm happy to have that be a friendly. It was my understanding, and speaking with staff earlier, that that would be fine. So on it goes 2, all right?
That should be sufficient. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so 2 o'clock, if I might then. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
2 o'clock.
We usually meet at 1 o'clock on Cortez to get the ferries back. 1 o'clock.
I understand, and the later the better for working people who might be able to get out of work and come. I mean, the preference would be the evenings like we always do on Quadra, so I'm just trying to find a bit of middle ground.
With COVID, I'm not staying on Cortez overnight or anywhere overnight.
I don't expect that people will be joining in person probably at all.
Okay, so currently it is on October the 15th at 2 p.m. and that is okay with staff. So we will go with that. This is all electoral areas. I am going to call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. Very happy to move forward with this one. Thank you very much. On to number 4, bylaws 352, 383, 384, and 386, electoral area C, public hearings. Director Abrams, can I get you to move receipt, please?
I'd like to move receipt of the report, first of all.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Colburn. Thank you very much. Through to staff, please.
Nothing to add, Madam Chair.
Okay, Director Abrams, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I do, actually. First of all, I already said before that I, had not been in favor of these things before, for hybrids, but moving on, we need to, I still believe it's not the best way to do things, but these are extraordinary times. And I think we do need to adapt for now and hopefully go back to normal, our old normal later. And I do have that amendment, and you'll have to tell me where to put that, Madam Chair.
We'll do the amendment before we do B through the rest. So on receipt, is there any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. So we'll do your subsequent as 1A, Director Abrams, and Ms. Watson has that all ready to go. Okay, so Director Abrams, if you would.
Okay, has everybody had a chance to read it?
It's up on the screen right now.
So I will move item A, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, which would, if you'd like me to read them, it's up to you, Madam Chair.
No, that's fine. Seconded by Director Wally. And if you would like to lead the discussion, Director Abrams.
Yes. The only thing I'd like to know on the discussion side of it, it's not strictly on the 5 points, but it is a process of inviting the public to attend. How are we going to notify the public ahead of time that there are phone numbers that they can call into or whatever it may be? I'm not sure what your processes are, but somehow there has to be a notification of virtual participation ability.
Yeah, I'm going to go to staff for that, please, to our CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe Dave has asked me to speak to that. Yes,
Okay.
Director, that is a good point for sure. We have done quite a bit of work on this behind the scenes prior to bringing forward these recommendations to the board for consideration. There will be ample opportunity and notification to the public advising of the methods in which they will be able to participate in the public hearing process, both in person and those procedures and policies that would be required as part of in-person attendance, as well as how they can join virtually, and a website number or or address that you would click on and participate in, which will then give you further directions if in fact you wish to comment during the portion of the public hearing where comments will be received. And that will be done more or less through a call-in feature. So all of that information will be available to the public prior to and once they log on to the website provided, which will be included in any advertisements as legislated by the Local Government Act.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That should take care of it.
Okay.
Madam Chair, may I speak briefly to this proposed motion?
Certainly, Mr. Yates.
Thank you. I'm just looking at number 5 and just warning the directors before they vote that it is not always possible to have public hearing minutes ready for a board meeting, for the next board meeting following a public hearing. In some cases, it does take longer, and I'm not looking at specifically the dates proposed for 2 of these public hearings are going to be occurring right before the agenda deadline for the September 16th meeting. And so I just want to caution directors, we may have to work all weekend and all night in order to get these things ready. So just a word of caution on that.
If I may, Madam Chair, I'd be more than happy to have Mr. Yates or Mr. Leach amend that last one to read so that it works for staff.
Okay. Thank you very much. And just confirmation to Mr. Yates. Is this a motion that the board as a whole votes on, or is this strictly electoral areas?
Madam Chair, I believe this motion, I could be wrong, but I believe it's intended to speak to the public hearings that are the subject of this particular staff report. And in that case, I believe it would be only the electoral area directors that would be voting on it.
Thank you for that confirmation. Is there any other discussion on the motion that's on the floor to accept 1, 2, 3, 4, and bullet 5 as amended? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All electoral areas only. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that subsequent carried. On to part B, please, Director Abram.
Okay, I'd move that a public hearing for bylaws number 383 and 384, BC Ferries, be authorized to be held starting at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, September 9th, in accordance with the requirements of Ministerial Order M192. And that the Quadra Island Community Hall, located on West Road, is designated as physical location for the public hearing for those individuals wishing to attend the hearing in person, and that the holding of the public hearing be delegated to the electoral area directors, with the directors for electoral area C and electoral area D designated as the chair and vice chair respectively for the public hearing.
Okay, and do I have a second? Director Lee, thank you very much. And Director Abram.
Question, Madam Chair. The public hearings be delegated to the electoral area directors. Did we not have some stipulation in there somewhere a while back that it's electoral area director, it would just be for A, C, and D?
I'll go to
Is B included in public hearings?
Could you say that again?
Okay, the question is area B included in public hearings? I understood from previous actions of the board that area B was included in public hearings.
Director Anderson was not included in that yet.
Okay.
Okay, so it needs to be amended to say delegated the electoral area directors for A, C, and D, with the directors for electoral area C and D, etc.
I'm going to have to take direction from staff on that one.
Madam Chair, that would be an order based on the board's previous decision regarding participation by electoral area B in public hearings, since this is not occurring in connection with Cortes Island business. The board previously had indicated that Area B would not be involved in these public hearings.
Okay, thank you. Director Anderson.
Thank you. I'll not be supporting the motion if it is amended as such. And I would appreciate still being informed so I can attend as a member of the public and be fully informed when I come back to vote at the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have B on the floor. Mr. Yates doesn't seem to think that there is an amendment that is required. So I am going to call the question. Is there anyone opposed?
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Director Abram?
Are you opposed, Director Abram?
No, but I just heard your comment saying that Mr. Yates thought there wasn't a need for an amendment, but I thought I heard him say that the comments that I made were appropriate, which would, I think, require some sort of indication that Area B is not included.
I don't think that's necessary, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. Mr. Leach, are you going to comment?
Yeah, I said I don't think that's necessary. I just think call the question as it is now, and we have previous board direction. We'll be following that board direction. I don't think it needs to be repeated on every motion.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Call the question. All electoral areas. Is there anyone in opposition? Seeing none, that is carried. On to part C, Director Abram.
Yes, I would move part C that, just a sec, jumping around here. Area C, that a public hearing on bylaw number 386, Quadra Fire Hall, be authorized to be held on Wednesday, September 9th, immediately following the public hearing on bylaws number 383 and 384, in accordance with the requirements MO M192. And that the Quadra Community Hall, located West Road, be used for individuals wishing to attend the hearing in person, and that the holding of the public hearing be delegated to the electoral area directors for electoral area C and electoral area D, designated as the chair and vice chair respectively for the public hearing.
Thank you. Director Lee is seconded. Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All electoral areas, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. On to part D, please, Director Abram.
Okay, so that a public hearing for, that a public hearing on bylaw number 352, quadroponics/hedifine, be authorized to be held at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, September 16th. If I could just check, Madam Chair, to make sure we didn't just change something. September 16th is a board meeting day, but that's fine. In accordance with the requirements of M192, Quadra Island Community Hall be the place of business for the public, and that the holding of the public hearing be delegated to electoral area directors, with the directors for electoral area C and D designated as chair and vice chair respectively for the public hearing.
Thank you, and that's been seconded by Director Lee. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All electoral areas, is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, that's carried. On to number 5, bylaw 400, electoral area D cannabis regulations. Director Lee. Director Lee, do you wish to move this?
You couldn't hear me, could you? Now I'm unmuted, and I move receipt of the report.
Thank you, and that's seconded by Director Wally. And to staff?
Nothing to add, Madam Chair.
Hey, Director Lee, do you have anything to add?
Well, I lost a lot of sleep over this one last night. But I think I'm doing the right thing. I think that I'm, accurate in that my position that the federal and provincial governments have legalized this crop, and they provide stringent guidelines and stringent rules and stringent licenses from both the federal and provincial governments. And I think that the regional district involvement in regulating cannabis should be minimal. And so what I've come to with discussions with the planning manager is that we will, because she advised me that we have to name cannabis in bylaw 1404 as an existing, as an entity that exists. Otherwise, anything that's not mentioned in the bylaw is prohibited. And so all we're doing is changing, and the manager of planning can correct me if I'm wrong, we're changing the definitions in the glossary of the bylaw to have the names of cannabis and whatever in there, but we're not explicitly rezoning a property or any properties. We're just acknowledging that they exist. And we're waiving a public hearing. So
yeah,
that's what we're doing.
Okay.
In Area D.
Thank you. And that was my understanding as well. So we're on receipt. Is there anybody else that would like to have a discussion on receipt? Seeing none, we'll call the question on receipt. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, on to part B, Director Lee.
Okay, I would move part B. Just a minute.
Seconded
by bylaw 400 being a bylaw to amend the zoning regulations applicable to electoral area D be now introduced and read a first time.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Davis. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion?
The only question I have outstanding that I've written down here is through the chair to the planning manager. I don't know why you've included industrial light as a definition in the glossary that you've proposed. I don't see any crop as being, the production of any crop as being an industrial operation. So I don't know why industrial light is in there.
Okay, I'll go to Ms. Nelson, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, to Director Lee. The purpose of including a reference to cannabis production under industrial light is to confirm that cannabis production would not be considered a light industrial use. And the reason for this is because in some other local governments and municipalities, what they've done is they've defined some cannabis production facilities as an industrial use. And so by doing this in bylaw 1404, we are clarifying that bylaw 1404 does not consider cannabis production as a light industrial use and is only mentioned as a means of agricultural use where licensed through provincial legislation.
Okay, and by changing the definition in the bylaw, it won't apply to any operation outside of cannabis production, right? It won't apply to, say, something else that's going on in Area D that's industrial, that could be deemed as industrial light?
Correct. Given the fact that there are no licensed cannabis production facilities currently occurring on light industrial lands within this bylaw, this amendment to the definition would not impact any current uses occurring in a light industrial zone.
Okay, but if there's a light industrial use happening in Area D, and you define a light industrial, even like not cannabis but something else, this doesn't give them permission at all. It doesn't. It only refers to cannabis, does it? Because I didn't see it under the heading of cannabis. Except the bylaw might be named that, bylaw 400.
Okay, Ms. Nelson.
Right, thank you, Madam Chair. Director Lee, I'm just trying to think of how best I can explain this. What we have done is we've taken any aspect of the definition section within the bylaw and ensured that where there may be some clarity required, that we have addressed that through this amendment. So we have ensured to the best of our ability that we have defined cannabis and its related processes, as well as any sort of uses that could be considered as part of a cannabis operation, and provided clarity as to where cannabis production and retail sales may be permitted and where they may be considered within a specific zone that has a list of permitted uses currently.
Yeah, so currently, just one more question, sorry, Chair, but currently, say the retail sales, commercial retail is located in the OCP and Area D. It's in the two nodes on the farthermost north and the farthermost south of Area D's populated area. So at Ocean Grove and Oyster River, those are the two commercial nodes. There won't be any commercial allowed anywhere in between those two locations, right?
Thank you through the chair. Director Lee, the parcels that would be potentially affected by an amendment to the retail sales definition would include 2 parcels in Ocean Grove, 2 parcels in Oyster Bay, and the 4 parcels in Oyster River.
Okay, thank you. Oyster Bay is included then.
Okay,
yes. That's good to know. I thought it was only the north and the south was the main commercial nodes. I didn't think Oyster Bay was. But anyway, you know, I trust that we're doing the right thing. I don't think that local government should be interfering with a legal crop that the federal and provincial governments have legalized, and the growing of this crop is no different from growing eggplants or tomatoes. And I don't think that local government should step in and start regulating any further than they're all really heavily regulated. So I'm in agreement with the whole thing and the manager of planning's approach to this.
Thank you. So we have the motion on the floor, which is for introduction and read a first time, all electoral areas only. I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed?
Yes, Director Abram.
Director Abram is opposed?
Yes. Sorry, I can't use my chat.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, seeing only one in opposition, I'll call that carried. On to part C. Director Lee.
Move C.
Thank you. Seconded by? Would somebody like to? Director Davis, thank you very much. This is all electoral areas for discussion. Seeing no discussion, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed?
Yes.
Director Abram is opposed. Thank you. Okay, seeing only one in opposition, I'll call that carried. On to part D, please, Director Lee.
This was the one I was tossing and turning about last night. I would like to go to public hearing, but I don't see it. It's because of COVID and everything. I don't see the necessity. So I would move D, that the requirement to hold a public hearing on bylaw 400 be waived in accordance with section 464(2) of the Local Government Act.
Okay, thank you. And do I have a seconder? Director Anderson, thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I'll call the question. Is there anyone in opposition? This is all electoral areas.
Opposed.
Okay.
Abram.
Thank you. With only one opposed, I'll call that carried. Okay, so under number 6, bylaw 385 Cordero Channel rezoning RZ1C20 Wilson. Director Abram, please.
Just,
Yes, thank you,
Madam
Madam
Chair,
Chair.
if I can
I'd like to move the CAO's report.
Thank you. And seconded by Director Unger. Thank you very much. Through to staff.
Nothing to add there, Madam Chair. Sorry if I can just interrupt. I saw Director Dow join the meeting, and I see Director Anderson still on, and then I saw she left. So if we could just get clarity if Director Dow's joined or not.
Mr. Yates or Ms. Watson?
I have Director Dow as leaving the meeting, so she's not in attendance right now.
Okay, thank you very much.
How long was she on for?
It looks like a matter of seconds.
Okay. Okay, so
Madam Chair, if I could, Madam Chair, if I could please interrupt for one moment. Director Abram, having been on the UBCM committee to deal with electoral area alternate directors for about 2 years, it was made very clear by the province and by the UBCM directors and alternate directors cannot attend the same meeting at the same time if they are in their official positions.
Yeah, I think that's clear, and she has left the meeting. I presume she was just trying to reconnect and was only on, according to Ms. Watson, a period of seconds. So, but thank you for that information. Yeah, we do have the CAO report on the floor for receipt. Did you wish to speak to this, Director Abram?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, wait, sorry, I did. I'm sorry, I skipped one. We're on Cordero Channel, correct?
Yes.
And we have received, we're now on discussion. I'm now back in the meeting. I just wanted to say that the reason that we're going to move on to B, which is first read, is because when we came forward with it before, we had been notified by staff that there was objection from a local First Nation. And rather than, since we didn't know what the concerns were and hadn't had any meetings with them personally, I felt that it was better that in order to keep staff working on it, that we go to first reading and then have a meeting with the First Nation, find out what their concerns are, if they can reconciled or whatever, and then if necessary, come back to second reading or scrap it. So anyway, just wanted to let you know, we're not trying to just extend the process, we're trying to make it a good process.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Cornfield.
Thank you, Chair. I just had to unmute.
Yep.
Is there a defined process when an objection from First Nations has been received?
Through to our CAO, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will speak on behalf of our CAO. Through the chair to Director Cornfield. Currently, we don't have formal policy or procedures within our planning procedures bylaw that would speak to this situation. So at this time, I would assume that it would be something that we would have discussions on at the either committee or board level.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may add to that.
Back to just let Director Cornfield complete his question, please.
Okay, I know that we do not have a process, or at least I'm not aware of one at the regional district level, but surely if we are being governed by that, I believe it's Bill 41 from through the province, have they identified a process?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not aware at this time. I'm not sure if our corporate officer would have additional information with respect to that.
Okay, the reason I ask is if there isn't, perhaps this is something that the board should follow up with the province or staff to follow up with province to find out what their intent is when there is an objection, how it should be dealt with.
Okay,
I
thank
may,
you.
Madam Chair.
Director Abram.
Yes, in answer to Director Cornfield, as he knows from his work at the Forest Service, the obligation for consultation is with the province, and anything beyond that is extra. So what we do at the local government level is to be fair and to everybody, and that includes referring to First Nations and listening to their concerns. This is what I'm talking about here by delaying this is basically a political decision. It's not a process that's defined by anybody or mandated by anybody. It's political consideration for my constituents. My constituents also include First Nations, and if they have a serious concern or some kind of concern that they want to bring forward, then I want to hear it, and I want staff to hear it and see if there needs to be something done about it. As far as regulation goes, it's completely with the province. So this is an extraordinary situation.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Director Lee, and then I'll go back to Director Cornfield. Director Lee, please.
Well, I agree with Director Abram, and I believe the Local Government Act requires us to consult with First Nations. It doesn't require us to have their agreement on what we're proposing. It's consultation, and then it's taken into account when we make the final decision after public hearing. And we've had several, not a lot, but a few instances where, you know, the entire constituency is stating one thing and the First Nations is opposed. And that's all taken into consideration at public hearing. But initially, we're only required to consult.
Okay, thank you. Director Cornfield, please.
Yeah, just, and maybe Annika can clarify. I know this had come up once before with the change in the legislation requiring us to consult, but consult has some specific meanings. And if you look at the Supreme Court decision, it was to consult and reasonable accommodation. And so I think we need to really clarify it. Otherwise, we could find ourselves in a bit of a pickle.
Thank you for that. And I think staff has heard that, and it'll be something that our CAO and Ms. Nelson can take a look at and see if we need to bring back to the board. Would that be fair to our CAO, please?
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment.
Okay, thank you. So is there anything else on receipt?
Yes, Madam Chair, once again, Director Abram, and I'm sorry, we have had this come up before, and we have gone to the province and asked them, and we have gotten specific direction from the province that the duty to consult is with the province. And anything beyond that is up to us. We have to consult, but we do not have to receive consent. So, you know, I don't really think we need to waste a lot of staff time, certainly a question or two by phone maybe, but I believe that it is very clear in the provincial legislation as to what we do, and the rest of it is what we do as good neighbors, I believe.
Okay, thank you for your comments. So we do have this on the floor for receipt. Seeing no other comments, I'm going to call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried on to Part B. Director Abram, please.
Yes, I'd like to move Part E, that the bylaw number 3 and 5 to amend quadrilateral and zoning bylaw 1990 be introduced and read a first time only.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Lee. Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, this is all electoral areas only. I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. On to number 7, bylaw number 398, Cortes Island First Responder Service. Director Anderson, please.
Thank you. Same comment as I made earlier on the halls. This is simply putting together the agreements for execution of service with the first responder with the fire department. So for my full support, thank you. It's been through EASC.
Okay, can I get you to move receipt?
Yes, sorry.
No.
Receipt of the CEO's report on this.
Thank you. That's seconded by Director Colburn. Is there any other discussion? Anything from staff?
Nothing from staff, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the question. Is there anyone in opposition? Seeing no one opposed, I'll call that carried. On to Part B. Director Anderson.
Move B, that bylaw 398 being a bylaw to authorize entering into an agreement for the provision of the first responder service on Cortes Island be now introduced and read a first time.
Seconded by Director Unger. That's great. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. On to Part C.
Move C, that the rules be suspended and that bylaw number 398 be given second and third readings.
Seconded by Director Kerr. Thank you very much. Is there any other discussion? Seeing no discussion, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. On to Part D. Director Anderson to clean it up.
Thanks. That bylaw number 398 being Cortes Island First Responder Service Agreement Authorization Bylaw 2020 be reconsidered, finally passed and adopted.
And that is seconded by Director Kerr. Thank you very much. And discussion.
Just great gratitude. It's been a long road, and I think this is the last piece that's going to be before the board on this matter, other than regular budgets going forward. So thank you to staff.
Great. Thank you very much. I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, we'll call that carried. On to number 8, bylaw number 389, home away from home service. If I can get somebody to move receipt, please.
Move receipt.
Move receipt. Director Abrams, seconded, please. By Director Colburn. Thank you very much. And through to staff, please. Mr. Yates, I think that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the board may recall that the last time this was seen at the board table, there was authority to move ahead with an alternative approval process, which we have gone through, and the report speaks to the results of that. Clearly, there was not a lot of opposition that was offered to the regional district. And so it is in order for the board to consider moving forward with adoption and setting up the service in accordance with the schedule that was attached to the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yates. Is there any discussion on receipt? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. And if I can get one of the directors to move Part B, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Director Abrams, seconded by Director Kerr. And that's that bylaw 389 being the home away from home service establishment bylaw 2020 be reconsidered, finally passed and adopted. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. On to Part C, that the 2020 to 2024 financial plan be amended to incorporate the home away from home service. That's moved by Director Colburn, seconded by Director Kerr. Thank you very much. And is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I just want to thank staff for doing this and moving us forward. And this is going to be a valuable tool for our regional district and for others north of us and across the water. So thank you very much. And yes, Director Davis, thanks to staff. I will pass that on. Seeing no other comments, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Hearing no opposition, we'll call that carried. Number 9, bylaw number 393 and 394, which is the public library facilities. If I can get somebody to move, Director Lee on receipt, thank you. And seconded by Director Colburn, thank you. And to Mr. Yates, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Similar to the last item, this has been through an alternative approval process, and the public was given opportunity to express their disapproval of the bylaws if they so wished. As it turned out, we had no electors submit response forms, and so I would suggest a lot of support from the public. Once the board has dealt with these items before you today, then we would bringing back some other pieces to move forward on this in a month or two.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion on receipt?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Director Abram?
Look, I don't want to seem like I'm trying to hold anything up here, but I'm somewhat confused. And from reading everything we've read in the past and everything that we've got in front of us right now, could you just give me like the Coles notes in 25 words or less? What are we doing?
Would you like me to respond, Madam Chair?
That would be great.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. So these two bylaws essentially establish a new service and authorize some borrowing for that new service, which is to provide capital funding for the construction of a new public library facility in Campbell River, and to be reimbursed for all of the costs that the regional district has spent to date and will spend in the future for seeking elector approval, for legal opinions, for the cost of borrowing money, et cetera, all to be reimbursed on an annual basis from the Vancouver Island Regional Library. So it's essentially at no cost to the regional district taxpayer. And the VIRL, working with the city of Campbell River, is proposing to develop a new library facility downtown, and this would be the key to providing the funding and the green light on that project.
So basically, this was the new process that they threw out to us some time ago, a few years ago, about being able to have us borrow the money, get the construction happening, do all that, and then they will gradually pay us back. Is that basically what we're having happen here? And we're not paying any more into VIRL through taxation to do this. It's just a shuffling of money.
Madam Chair, if I may, the cost of Vancouver Island Regional Library to pay us for whatever annual debt costs we incur will be absorbed in the VIRL's annual budget. I can't really speak to whether or not that budget is changing as a result of this particular project, but we've been advised that it's easily absorbable within their annual operating budget. So that's what we know on that particular point.
Okay. Thank you. I have Director Anderson on receipt, please, for comment.
Thank you. It speaks just to the process. I'm in support of the library service. That's fine, as I was with the home away from home. But I did receive comment from a few of my constituents, especially on the home away from home one, that the voter knowledge of these processes is almost nil. And it's very, very hard when there isn't either a director in the area or an organization that is putting out information for people to really know that this is happening or be informed and mobilize in any possible way if they had concern. The way that the regional district communicates absolutely is legal and follows all of our required procedure and law, but isn't really English for folks. And when we do these kind of AAPs at a region-wide level, it's basically a slam dunk. And I just think we should do a little bit more effort in outreaching to the public in English in the future. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for your comments. Director Lee, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm the chair of the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board, and I can tell you that this new library for Campbell River will be one of the flagships for the North Island. It's budgeted for $14 million for the year 2022 to be delivered. The board, it's up to the board, the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board, to decide how they proceed with it. This is really preliminary where we are today. We're required to go through the public alternate approval process and make sure there aren't great objections to it. I believe from my time with the as chair of the library board for the past 2 years and my active participation in the libraries, that there is huge public support for this in the region. It will really improve the downtown core. It will really provide better services to everyone. And, you know, I would encourage us to take these first few steps. The library board has a consolidated facilities master plan with millions in reserve specifically for these sort of projects. So they will be paying the mortgage off, and the regional district, the only increase you might see is a bump up in the levy from the libraries, which would be spread all over the whole library system. And because we have reserves, it's going to be negligible. So it's up to the library board to proceed with the actual arrangements. They'll be in discussions with the city of Campbell River over a lot of things. They'll be reaching out to the public to ask them what kind of library they're interested in having, what kind of features they want in the new library. I guarantee that people will be thrilled to see a new library in Campbell River.
Thank you very much, Director Lee.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have nobody else for comment on receipt. I'll call the question. This is all directors. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll go to part B, that bylaw 393 being a public library facility service establishing bylaw 2020 be reconsidered, finally passed and adopted. And I have Director Adams and Director Unger moving and seconding that, please. And is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, that's carried. On to part C, that bylaw 394 being the public library facility loan authorization bylaw 2020 be reconsidered, finally passed and adopted. Moved by Director Kerr, seconded by Director Adams. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. And part D, that the 2020-2024 financial plan be amended to incorporate the public library facility service. That's moved by Director Colburn, seconded by Director Kerr. And discussion. Seeing no discussion, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. I look forward to that new library in Campbell River, and thank you, Director Lee, for your service on the VIRL.
Thank you. Yes, it's a thrill. We've built 17 new facilities over the past few years, and we're still going strong on Sooke and Campbell River, and some improvements are going to happen for Gold River, Tassus, and there's 3 or 4 of them that are going to get new furnishings in our budget, new chairs and things, and upgrading. It is a really forward-thinking organization. It's really thrilling to be the chair. It's wonderful.
Thank you. So just a quick question that I have through Director Adams to staff regarding a possible press release.
Yeah, if I could speak to that, Madam Chair, understanding that the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board and Chair Lee take the lead on press releases, just wondering what our role as a regional district is to work collaboratively with that.
May I chip in on this? We have the Vancouver Island Regional Library system has their own communications manager. And he will likely prepare any press releases and share them with you before they're sent out. So his name is Dave Carson at VRL, but you can ask that the press, he'll make sure that Campbell River's included on all the press releases. He's really great.
Super, thank you very much. And thank you, Director Adams, for bringing that up. I think
Madam
it's
Chair.
important that we participate. Director Abram, did I hear you?
Yes, you did.
Oh.
I really appreciate Director Adams' comment, and having worked in communications before, I think that it would be totally appropriate for VIRL to work with Campbell River and the SRD with Lane to develop this press release, because this is it's a new way of doing business, and I think that it's something that has to be done. It has to be perceived properly by the public. So the wording is going to be very, very important to get out there correctly, and we need to have the SRD and Campbell River's wording incorporated with the IRLs, which may be slightly different. So anyway,
Okay,
that's my.
I'll make sure our executive director at VIRL knows to instruct her communications manager to Dave Carson to get hold of both Campbell River and SRD's communications people and do a joint press release.
Thank you very much. Okay, so on to our last one here, bylaw number 401, Quadra Island Community Hall Service and Lease Agreement. Director Abram, please.
Yes, I'd like to move receipt of the CAO's report.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Okay, Director Unger, thank you very much. And through to staff.
Nothing to add, Madam Chair.
Hey, Director Abrams, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, just that it's great having this facility, which is the flagship on Quadra Island, owned by our own regional district.
Wonderful. Thank you. I see no other discussion, so I'm going to call the question on receipt. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. On to Part B, Director Abram.
Yes, I'd like to move Part B, that bylaw 401, being a bylaw to authorize entering into a lease agreement for Blanket Memorial Park on Quadra Island be now introduced. Read a first time.
Thank you, and that's seconded by Director Colburn. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, this is all directors and weighted. I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, I'll call that carried. On to Part C, Director Abram.
Yeah, that the rules be suspended and bylaw number 401 be given second and third readings.
Okay, seconded by Director Lee. Thank you very much. And discussion? Seeing no discussion, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, that is carried. On to Part D, Director Abram.
That bylaw number 401 be returned for further consideration by the board following the public notification process.
And seconded by Director Lee. Thank you. Is there discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? With no opposition, I'll call that carried. That is great. We are now on to correspondence, and I will entertain one or all of our correspondence.
Pull one, please.
Okay, so let's just do them
in seriatim.
In seriatim. Director Lee, would you like to move that, please?
Move receipt of one.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Cornfield. And through to you, Director Lee.
I would like a subsequent motion, please, after this is received.
Okay, is there any discussion on receipt? Director Cornfield?
Yes, Madam Chair.
I've got you on the list, Director Abram. Director Cornfield, please.
Yep, this should be of interest to electoral areas, at least electoral area A especially, along with Campbell River and a lot of the communities in the Strathcona Regional District. This is about determining the allowable annual cut. So it's the rates of cut, constraints to harvesting. And this is a big change over what was the Strathcona timber supply area, which was set up out of Campbell River. This now rolls in the remainder of what's left over of the Kingcome. So it looks at all of the available fiber on non-area based tenures in the whole North Island. From Campbell River, both sides of the island, includes some of the small islands outside our regional district, but should be significant concern. It's an opportunity to comment on it, and I think as a regional district we should do that.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other comment on receipt?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Director Abram?
Director Abram?
Yes, I'd just like to ask if we could please have a copy of this correspondence sent to the Surge Narrows Community Association, and all of that contact info is on file with the regional district.
Thank you. That's just directions for the staff. Thank you very much. And Director Davis, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to be commenting on it at the municipal level, but I will also be sending my comments into the regional district regarding it, because I do take exception to some of the statements in here. Being a karst professional myself, I just have some issues with their qualified karst professional designation. Using BC Timber Sales employees to conduct karst investigations into blocks which BCTS is also logging, and then certifying them loggable. There's a bit of a conflict of interest there, and percentages of net down that they're talking about are too low. I also know the Mochalat First Nation are contesting their right to conduct this review independent of them, and I'm sure they'll be following up on it as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Davis. Okay, so I have nobody else on the comment list. So on receipt, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed to receipt? Seeing no one, I'll call that carried. Back to you, Director Lee.
Yes, I would like to move. We have until September 28th to provide them with our comments as a regional district. I would like to move that Flynnrod make a presentation to the SRD so that we can comment on their plan with more information as a board. I think we need to do it together as a board. And I'm not sure how Area D is going to be impacted, because I understand that this is referring to the Crown lands and not the private managed forest lands.
Okay, before we, can you please get your motion up?
So the motion is that Flynnrod. Do you want me to type it up?
No, just say it out loud.
That Flynnrod, FLNROD, make presentation to the SRD prior to the deadline of September 28th so that we can comment.
Okay.
And with more information.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, thank you. And then to Director Cornfield, please.
Well, I like the idea of requesting that they come to the board. My difficulty with that is if we have until the end of September to provide comments, this is a hugely complex issue, and if they come in September, we won't have time to go through it to make a response back. That Campbell River, I'm already been digging into this part. I'm glad to see Director Davis from TASIS also concerned enough to look into it. And I would like to see us have some sort of a working group to be able to ask meaningful questions when FLNRO comes to make a presentation. So I think the presentation has to be soon enough before the deadline for response. If that makes sense.
Could we have a special cow to deal with that?
So I'm just going to go through to staff, please, to our CAO.
Madam Chair, you can have whatever you want. So we have a meeting scheduled on September 16th, and there's East, the board, and Strathcona Gardens, so I doubt there's any time for a cow then, but you can certainly, if it's a cow that the board wishes, we can try and come up with a date that everyone's available to participate and see if we can coordinate that with FLNRO for a presentation. So I would suggest if that's the will of the board, then we would touch base with FLNRO first, see if they're willing to give us a presentation and a couple dates, likely in the first, I would say, it sounds like 2 weeks of September, and then pull the board to see about their availability.
Okay.
Okay, so that would be a special cow then, just for clarification, that will be a special cow because the September 16th meeting is already populated and we will not be having any delegations at that meeting. So it would have to be a special cow. And that is what is inferred in this motion that is on the table. I heard somebody else speaking. I'm sorry. Was that you, Director Davis?
Director Abram was
Director Abram, okay.
Okay, I'm a little bit leery about having an SRD response because I believe we're going to have, I don't know, 6, 8 different responses that are all going to be going in on this particular issue. Director Cornfield mentioned Director Davis is working on it. It's certainly being worked on in the Discovery Islands. That's why I asked that it be referred to the Surgeon General's Community Association. And I know there's going to be different opinions all around the table as to what direction things should go. There's a lot of work being done in the Discovery Islands, all the way up, as far as I mean, it's got to do with AAC and transfer of and this and that. And I don't think we're going to come to an agreement amongst our entire board as to one position. So I'm not sure that we're really going to accomplish anything here by doing all this.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Director Lee, did you have a final comment so we can close?
Well, on that point by Director Abram, even if it's only an information meeting that, all the directors could attend and then respond individually afterwards. It doesn't have to be a board response, but I don't even know how much of Area D is included in this because most of Area D's forested lands are private managed forest lands. I don't know what they're talking about for Area D. That's all I want to know is what are they talking about? Okay. And are we protecting the riparian areas and the watersheds? That's what I want to know. But I don't think it impacts Area D as much as it does Sayward and other areas. So, everybody's response is going to be tailored to the area they represent, I think, but we just need to have an overview from FLNROD of exactly what is this whole plan about.
Okay, thank you. I have Director Anderson.
Thank you. No, I concur with the comments that I'm hearing, that it'd be great to have information and that we might be hard pressed to find a collective view. I wonder, though, if it would be, I would suggest that it would be a benefit to some of the organizations in the region that are particularly interested in commenting, perhaps the Surgeon Narrows Community Association, perhaps the Cortes Community Forest, Co-op, et cetera. Perhaps there are others. I wonder if we couldn't invite reps from key organizations to attend in a witness capacity to a COW if we're going to do that to this presentation, because it's a lot to wade through. And if we're looking for that benefit, it would be great to pass that on to some of the other substantive organizations in the constituency that might want to comment as well.
Okay, I would leave that up to staff to see if that's something that we can facilitate. And also, you know, they need to speak to Flinrod first before we even move forward. So at this point, the motion that's on the floor is that Flinrod make a presentation to the SRD prior to the deadline of September 28th, 2020, so that we can comment. And that through our conversation means a special COW, which the staff will be working on. So is there any other discussion on that motion?
Yes.
Okay, Director Cornfield.
Yeah, and if people turn to the map on page 3 of 79 in the, it shows you the overview map. So things like Quadra Island or TFL. So they're not included in the timber supply review. The boundary does not include Cortez Island whatsoever. It does include the dark shaded areas, which is the Sayward Forest and up into Sayward, the non-tree farm license areas. The big change for this one is that before these were 2 separate timber supply areas. Now they're being rolled together into one. And I haven't been through it enough yet to see whether or not they're apportioning the volume of timber that would come, say, from the North Island, could use up the entire allowable annual cut, which would preclude harvest in the south, or vice versa. So it's also about how that cut is distributed and by species, whether or not there's adequate constraints to deal with things like visuals, recreational use, environmental issues, stream side areas, underground karst resources. So this is what it's all about. It's a complex thing and there's no easy answer. So Flinro might be able to answer some of the stuff, but it's going to take some digging to know the right questions to ask.
Okay.
And if I may, I'm Chair.
Okay, just final comment, please. Okay.
Okay, me? Was it me?
Yes, go ahead, Director.
Okay. I absolutely agree with Director Cornfield that from what I'm hearing from the people that are digging into this, like Jerry talked about, is that there are lots of things going on behind the scenes in the way of transferring AACs, people trying to trade woodlots, trade private land, trade this, trade that. And the AAC thing is just all over the maps. You know, I'm not sure that boundaries are as hard and fast as are being talked about here. And I think a presentation from Flinrod may help that. I'd be more than happy to attend that virtually. And hopefully I agree with Director Anderson that if we could invite some of those key organizations that are totally into this, you know, 100% of their time, they should be there also. And so that I don't have to try and convey it to them.
Okay, thank you. I think staff has all of that written down. Is that correct, Mr. Leach?
Yeah, I've got that.
Thank you.
And if I could just comment, I really appreciate Director Cornfield's breadth of knowledge, and Director Wally, both former forestry professionals, that they'll be able to help ask the right questions of, you know, because there's so much jargon attached to these reports. And if you're not in forestry and you haven't been, it's a little bit daunting to understand what they're up to. So I would appreciate it coming to our board and hearing what Directors Cornfield and Wally might, and the others that are digging into it, might have to ask about the plan going forward. I'm sure they'll be more tuned in than I have the ability to be tuned in on it. So, I mean, I'm very interested. It could affect my area, but I doubt that it will, because too much because 80% of my land base is private managed forest lands.
Okay.
So, but I want to make sure of that. I want to check that out. So, yeah, I think this meeting would be great.
Okay, thank you. So the motion on the floor is up on the screen. I've already read it out once. I think staff has their marching papers should this fly. So I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, that carries. Okay, to finish up our correspondence, I will entertain 2A.
Move 2 and 3.
Okay.
Move 2 and 3.
2B. Thank you. Is there a seconder?
3. Did you say
Seconder
2,
by
2,
Director
3?
Colburn.
Move the next 2.
Yes. Thank you.
I only have, Chair.
There's 2 parts
I
to
only
public
see-
access, local government, Director Abrams, and both have been
Okay.
moved.
Okay, I only saw one, number 2, and then A and B.
That's
So we're
correct.
moving to A and B. Thank you.
That is correct. Thank you. And that's
Thank
been
you.
that's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. We're going to move on to P, members' reports. I'm going to ask for Director Davis to please move his report.
Sure. I'll move that the August 10th, 2020 report from myself regarding the Vancouver Island Coastal Communities Climate Change Survey be received.
Thank you. And seconded by Director Colburn. Thank you very much. Did you want to speak to your report, Director Davis?
There's not much I need to say. I was hoping for a final because I did mention that this was a draft. It's still currently a draft. They're planning a 2-day conference for November 6th, although I noticed that I have a conflict with, there's something else going on at that time. Iced tea, actually, so I've asked that it be set back to the following week. So, but tentatively, they'll be having their meeting regarding this probably online November 6th and 7th.
Hey,
So,
thank you very
yeah.
much. Comment from Director Cornfield.
Yes, through to Director Davis. In the methodology and the actual survey from UVic exploring policies and priorities, I was a little concerned when I read that there was only 106 responses from 38 municipalities and 10 RDs, which included all elected representatives and CAOs were invited to participate. So from 40 municipalities and 10 regional districts. To get 106 responses from probably 300 people is not a 96% response rate. So I have a little bit of concern about the feedback that was provided and whether or not it was a municipal response or individuals responding. So do you know, Martin, whether it was an official response from a municipality or a regional district?
I'll have to follow up on that and get back to you. I can't really answer at this point, but I'll certainly bring it forward.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on receipt, and thank you very much, Director Davis, for your report. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Oceans Protection Plan. Director Abrams, please.
Yeah, I just moved that the report regarding the June 29th, 2020 Oceans Protection Plan newsletter be received for your information.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Colburn. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. We have no management reports, new business or addendum items. We're going to move on to T, the closed section. If I get somebody to move the report from the CAO, please. Director Lee, thank you very much, and seconded by Director Unger. I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried, and that the board convene a closed session immediately following termination of the public meeting to consider matters deemed to fall within the parameters of subsection 91E, 91F, 91G, 91N, and 91O of the Community Charter. That's moved by Director Colburn, seconded by Director Lee. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Oh, sorry, that was somebody.
Yep.
Director Cornfield?
I just have a question. Do we have to do we log out from this Teams meeting and join back again? Or how do we handle that?
Yes, you were sent an in-camera Teams meeting request from Ms. Watson, not during this meeting. So just we need to log out of this meeting and go back into the in-camera session.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I will call the question on the motion. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. And Mr. Yates, do I need a motion to terminate?
Yes, Madam Chair. Like previously, we're actually closing these meetings, terminating them before opening the next.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion from Director Colburn to terminate the public meeting, seconded by Director Adams, knowing, of course, that we're moving into closed session. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I'll call that carried. And like I said, please hang up and log out of this meeting and then join the in-camera session. I will see you all in there.